right, you guys. Well, first off, thanks for having me. For those of y'all who don't know me, my name is Anthony Rodriguez. I am a professional dog trainer and then a certified behavior consultant, all through professional dog trainer counseling. But I work with Shelby Humane, I foster dogs, and in reality, I've only been doing this for 5 years, but it's been a trajectory like this as far as diving headfirst into something that you love. So being surrounded by you guys or people that are like-minded with the same passions, it's a pretty cool opportunity. So thank y'all for having me. Real quick, I'll tell you, I have one personal dog of my own, and then I have 5 fosters. I take in behavior case dogs from Shelby Humane or from other organizations that people are, hesitant to get to know. So a lot of these dogs, they're just scared. But in reality, if you put them in an environment that can give them a chance to breathe, give them a chance to relax, give them a chance to just be a dog, right? It's a game changer for them and a lifesaver for a lot of them. Before I go into what I'm going to talk about and just kind of going deep into dog world, I just want to kind of put it out there and figure out what organizations are represented here. I know we have a few, but y'all just shout them out.
Best Friends.
Best Friends? Beautiful. Animal League, love it.
Love Huffing Balls.
Yes. Keep going, people. Yeah.
Friends.
Yeah.
Chelsea TNR.
Excellent. Beautiful.
Feral Dogs of Avondale.
Excellent. Yeah. So all these organizations, right? Shelter World, foundations, supporting these dogs. This is such a huge thing, and just the fact that this exists is pretty awesome, right? So thank you guys again for having me. Before I go into it, is there anything like jarring that you guys are really concerned about or want me to address? I have a list of things, but we can just kind of go with the flow as we talk. But does anyone have anything specific?
So one is how, if you're out walking, how you interact with a dog that's not on a leash that might be dog reactive, as far as keeping yourself safe and other, animals.
Gotcha.
The other thing is the program that you do currently with West Rover Water Sports.
Yeah.
That one, and I don't know what everybody else wanted to.
That's okay.
Yeah. Excellent.
Separation anxiety.
Separation anxiety. Gotcha.
Yeah. Best way to, when you bring them home from their owner surrender and they start off with their separation anxiety, best way to approach that.
How do you deal with dogs that are absolutely 100% not food motivated?
Okay.
They're stressed.
I like that.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that is.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to hit a few bigger topics, and then we'll dive into those individual ones, and then at the end, if we have questions, we'll go that route too, okay? So, may not and Leandro, if it gets close to time or something, let me know. Okay. So the first thing I want to talk about is, it's contrary to the normal way of interacting with dogs, or at least the way that I was growing up, learning how to interact with dogs. It's interesting working in this field because everyone has their own life experiences with dogs. Most everyone has grown up with dogs, or they've been told how to interact with dogs for their first 20 years of life before they realize there may be a different approach to this. And the way I was taught is that there's a hierarchy to how you interact with your animals. You need to be dominant. You need to be the one driving every situation. You need to be controlling. They need to be compliant and listening to you. And that it's such a common way to think, but it's not the most efficient way, at least from now my new experience of interacting with animals. Having a relationship-centric approach to interacting with these animals is a game changer. Just recognizing that every animal is different, just like every person that you meet is different. They all have their own personalities. They all have their own things that they like, things that frighten them, things that they're sensitive to or hyper-aware to. And I think recognizing that on the front end is so important because you have to develop a relationship with this animal. right? Not all animals are trusting on the front end. I've been telling people recently, just the fact that a dog will trust you without knowing you it's an anomaly. Like, that is so special, you know? But you have to recognize that these are individuals who have their own life experiences. And a lot of people who work in shelter rescue, that type of world, animal control world, you have to recognize that you're meeting these animals probably on the worst day of their life, the scariest day of their life. And the way that you've gotten to meet them probably was due to them being captured or caught, you know, for their safety, right? But in their mind, they're terrified a lot of the times. You know, when it comes to aggression or even reactivity, stress, fear, anxiety, these are likely the root causes as to why they feel they have to act this way. But recognizing that on the front end, knowing that, okay, I don't have a relationship with this animal, but I can start to develop one, is such a huge, huge thing that can set both you and the animal up for success moving forward. But trust is such a big factor, you know, and recognizing that even though you don't know this animal, that you can start to develop trust is really, it takes the pressure off of having to get results right now in this moment. Right? Hopefully that's not a constraint that you put on that relationship, but at least it gives you a chance to look at it from a different lens. Right? Patience is a big thing, especially with dogs who may be feral, right? Or dogs that have likely been abused or neglected or just, you know, left off to do their own thing, and there's no reason for them to trust people. Recognizing that can give you a different approach of how you start to develop trust with these animals. A lot of it too has to do with what motivates animals. You mentioned food-motivated animals, right? Or the lack of food motivation. Stress animals not likely going to eat the first day you feed them. You bring in a dog off the animal control truck, put them in the shelter environment, it may not eat for a few days. It may last longer. Recognizing that this dog is stressed, this dog is fearful, hence why they're not doing or doing something, is again so important to have that relationship-centric lens on interacting with this animal. Because then when you do see them start to eat or start to open up or loosen up or breathe, that can tell us, okay, we're making progress. You know, it's hard to quantify progress in the shelter world, but just a dog eating can be a benchmark for them, right? That's huge. Dogs approaching people is a huge, huge thing that they do that shows their willingness to trust. You know, we call it the trust dance. It's this interesting thing to watch from a certain lens where you see a dog want to approach a person and then oftentimes retreat really, really quickly, right? Their weight will be back, their front end will be down, they're very hesitant and timid, sometimes shaking, right? But recognizing that the dog is trying, again, is huge, right? Because everything is on the dog. You can't force the dog to like you, to approach you. It has to be their choice. Power of choice is so empowering for animals, and giving them that space or that freedom to make that choice is a huge relief for them. Because again, a lot of animals are dealing with correction-based training or dominance theory and things like that, where they're almost discouraged from making choices. Right? They're being shot or jerked or yelled at or whatever, you know, negative aspect people can put into a dog making a choice is defeating for them. But you see visibly the weight come off their shoulders when they're given a chance to approach if they want to, right? Or share space if they want to, or retreat if they want to. Those choices are huge. And giving a dog a chance to approach and retreat is a huge, huge recipe for building trust with an animal.
Can that same philosophy be applied to cats?
I would think so. You know, it's been interesting. I don't have a lot of experience with cats, but in watching animal documentaries, right? You can watch a SeaWorld documentary, even though there's different storylines with that, but any zoo shows, right? There's a great show, it's called Secrets of the Zoo from Down Under or something. Watch these zoo shows and watch how the handlers interact with the animals, especially the ones that they are just getting into their facility, and it is a lot of that same approach. In fact, the first few days when an animal comes into a new facility, there should be zero expectations of that animal.
Right.
Just let them relax, let them decompress, because they've just been transferred from A to B. B is a big question mark for them, right? So they don't know where they're at. And putting pressure on them to do something or to interact or having any expectations of them is just not fair to the animal. But I think, yes, that way to build trust with an animal is likely universal. You know, I would think with people, not necessarily with food being the motivator, but just patience and acceptance and not judging them for how they're acting in this moment, I think is a pretty universal approach. But it is pretty eye-opening to watch other handlers with different species do the exact same thing that we do with dogs, which is develop a relationship with them, and then find something that motivates them: food, play, freedom, power of choice, and then watch that relationship grow exponentially. It's huge. But yeah, I think it would be universal.
I was thinking of squad.
Yeah, right.
You know, another thing I think is important, and I tell people on the front end when you first meet a dog, whether it's in the shelter world or going to a client's house or a stray dog that you may interact with, assume everything has been done to this dog, good and bad. Just blanket it with everything, because we really don't know what this dog has been through or this animal has been through. But I think if you assume everything on the front end, it takes those expectations off of, oh, if I move too quickly or if I raise my hand, this dog may flinch. And so you're kind of more hyper aware of how you're being perceived by the animal. You know, but then also recognizing, okay, if this dog won't eat on day one, it's all right. Probably due to all the emotions that it's going through. You know, but recognizing that you don't know what this animal has been through it's a more healthy approach to interacting with the dog, especially a scared and fearful one. But learning their body language is tremendous. The more you interact with a feral dog or a scared dog, you're going to see all these same characteristics, right? Very hesitant. The more obvious ones would be drooling, shaking, growling, barking, lunging, all these things that are obvious, but there may be subtleties, right? Just their weight being on the back end, or they're leaning, is a sign of, you know, of them being a little fearful or timid, but there's opportunities there, right? So that's something we want to keep in mind. But giving a dog a power of choice is so empowering for them that it gives them control of their situation, you know. And a lot of dogs have lacked that, which is being able to choose what they do or don't want to do. Like if you're crate training with a dog and you have to pick up the dog and put it in there every single day, you know, after a week of that, you go to start to pick up the dog and she's going to run away because she knows what's going to happen, right? But if you set up a scenario where it's the dog's choice to go in there and it delivers in some positive way for them, or conversely, it doesn't give them something they perceive as negative, it changes their expectation. Oh yeah, I'm going to go in there. I can do that. So, I mean, if we want to use the crate as an example, what you utilize the crate for is very important. You know, I love fostering. Who has fosters? Very good, you have fosters, yeah?
I've fostered, but I
have a foster.
Gotcha. Right. Well, here's the thing. If you bring in a dog from an environment that lacks resources or structure or routine, you have a ball and play, right? Because now you can start to establish routine and predictability and things like that. So for a dog that has, let's say either has no experience with the crate or the worst experiences with the crate, we have to start anew. Right? We have to help them start to develop this perception of what is this thing, right? So there's a lot of strategy with feeding in the crate. There's a lot of strategy with my foster dogs. What I've done is every time they come back inside from outside, I will give them something in their crate. Maybe it's a meal, maybe it's a frozen toy, maybe it's a chew, maybe it's a toy, maybe it's just a handful of treats, or a handful of food. Something is going to be there when they go in. And then it becomes predictable. And now, they're so quick, I'm like having to stay outside longer. They're like at the back door waiting, saying, all right, let's go. And then they're beeline right to their crate, or their room, or their space, you know. just have to recognize what is their perception of this thing. Is it I'm being locked away and everyone's going to leave and the lights are going to go off, it's going to be silent, or is it just another space to relax in? And in my situation, so I have 5 fosters and 1 dog per adult, so there's 6 there, but they're all separate. They all stay separate. Mine do. And the reason being is because that's an environment that I've kind of created based off my dog being separate, but also learning how to manage them and help them become more independent and confident when they are. I call it speed dating at my house. So I'll spend time with each of them individually, but that is the life that these specific dogs would prefer. You go to Meredith's house, I'll make sure she tells you how many dogs she has in her house. It is like a huge one, but it's a different life, and that's what those dogs prefer. Feral dogs are more dogs, so they love that community and interaction. It's just a different environment. But when they're with me, it's the best time ever. When they're away from me, it's still a good time for them. Like there's not much separation anxiety or stress happening. Who mentioned separation stress? You did. Okay, good. So recognizing when a dog is stressed when they're alone is something that, there's a lot you have to think about history, right? We don't know what their history is, so we can assume all the worst, right? But having them do independent activities, starting with you there, but then slowly removing your presence is helpful. Feeding is an easy one, where some dogs will only eat if you're right there next to them, right? There are ways to kind of walk that line of raising the value of the food and seeing if that helps, or just slowly, systematically removing your presence from them while they're eating to see if they can start to build that independence. And once you're at that point, you can get creative as far as solo activities for them to do. Busy work is a great term that I use as far as giving dogs a time-consuming activity that they can do by themselves. Right? And that's usually where I start with clients whose dogs are showing separation stress or separation anxiety, is recognizing, okay, what are they willing to do by themselves right now? And then seeing how can we empower them to be confident and comfortable doing that for a longer period of time. So there's one thought there of activities or engaging with something. Another one is the environment that they're in.
Do you mind if I ask what are some examples of activities like this?
Yeah, absolutely. So feeder toys are great for meals, and there's a lot of options, but time-consuming activities. So I use a Kong wobbler. That's like my go-to. But the Kong wobbler is just a plastic product. You put their food in, and they knock it, and it kind of bobbles like this.
It's my favorite.
Yeah. So it bobs.
Can't knock it down.
I do that with my cat.
With your cat? Yeah, they have them for chickens too. Right?
They have it for chickens?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's not a wobbler, but it's that concept of I interact with this
Of
thing and food
enrichment.
comes out.
Okay.
Yeah. So feeding enrichment is huge because it's something they're going to do every day. And if you can make a task that they're going to do every day exciting or interactive and time consuming, why not do that, But the wobbler is interesting because as is, just a plastic product, you can buy it, pour their food in, and they can knock it around. And it may take them 20 minutes or so to eat, right? But there's more. You can put a tennis ball in there, or a rubber Kong in there with the food. Now they have to work harder, because there's less surface area, so they're working it even more. Then you can go further and take that and do it in the grass. And they knock it in the grass, and now they have to forage for the food they've knocked down. So there's layers to enrichment. But they prefer that type of eating, or that type of interactivity. There's been studies at zoos that have given dogs free access to food or an interactive feeder toy, and they're going to gravitate to that. It's a natural behavior that they're kind of deprived of. A lot of house pets are deprived of natural dog behaviors, whether it's smelling things on walks, because we want them to walk next to us, or foraging for things, or hunting for their food, right? These are all activities that naturally dogs would do. But they live the good life, right? But I think any activity that dogs may do daily that you can make interactive or engaging, go that route. I think that's a
Recommend that for a morning walk.
yeah, definitely. Because now they're going to use their toes to go find the food. You know, now you could also get a snuffle mat. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of snuffle mats.
Assume we haven't.
Assume you have. Yeah, that's what I'm going to explain right here. This is my hand snuffle mat. So it is it's a product that simulates grass. You know, or something that food or objects can be like buried within, and they have to forage for it. So it kind of reinforces their want to forage. But grass is nature's stuff, you know, so you can just as easily take your wine dog, take their bowl of food, and go outside and just scatter it in the grass. This is all considering that it's the only dog or there's no food aggression involved. Right, so keep that in mind. If your dog is possessive over things, or guards their food bowl, or is aggressive over food with other dogs, manage that situation appropriately. Let's say I had a foster dog who resource guarded the wobbler, so I would give him the wobbler in the crate, and he would knock it around, and then I'd let him go out to go to the bathroom. Once he's outside, now I'm going to get the wobbler. I'm not going to reach in there, especially in a confined area, and potentially, him think I'm stealing from him. You know, it's a really important thing to keep in mind that if your dog is possessive over something or guards their food bowl specifically, don't take the route of this dog needs to interact with him while they're eating. You know, that was what I was taught. You mess with their food bowl, mess with them while they're eating. Think about if I was to go and start messing with you guys right now. You're gonna let me know that you're not comfortable with that. It's normal. You know, to feel that way. So like resource guarding does have a big, red flag negative connotation, but recognizing the situation for what it is, recognizing you may not know everything about the dog's history, gives us a different perspective on that. You know, because there are ways to manage resource guarding too. But taking the path of least resistance is always in your best interest when it comes to that type of behavior.
I have a question, kind of what Ginger said, because I'm not fostering now, but I have fostered dogs that dealt with anxiety in the crate. And, you're trying to do a good thing by getting the dog out, but it's still, you might have to go to work or you're leaving your home. So how do you recommend them, because you don't want to leave a toy in the crate with them for fear of them choking. What do you recommend in those situations to help with anxiety outside of, obviously, your trazodone and things like that?
Yeah, so it's all going to be dog specific, recognizing what this dog, emotions are like when presented with a crate. Okay?
Right.
So like recognizing that crate is not the only way to manage dogs. X pens are awesome. I love X pens. I use them for chicken coop, I use them to line the room with my fosters, use them to create a space for a dog that's not as confining. So giving a dog an option of crate with a pen around the crate now creates two different environments within one, which is in the crate or outside of the crate with that space. It's a lot of trial and error because you are recognizing what the dog can tolerate or what the dog is absolutely not be okay with. And there's levels to it. If you have a dog that's binging up a crate from the inside, trying to bust out, potentially hurting themselves, then we're going to look at that situation differently. If that was the situation, if it was that severe, we would look at a guest room or a bathroom that we can, proof for the dog, or the crate with the pin set up around it so they can go in or out if they want to. It's up there. Yeah. Yeah. That panic, when it sets in,
Pity that was
shakes
like
it.
Terrified of thunderstorm.
So there's even more
So
anxiety.
we got hit with the late afternoon storm, and I was watching it on video at work, and I go,
Yeah.
That was recent.
yes,
Yeah.
she now has a little one.
Did she try it?
Oh, yeah.
See, that's,
She managed to scoop the plastic out, got it completely, you know, it latches.
Yeah.
She got that completely undone. And proceeded to bend that back in a way that neither me nor my husband can get back in place.
yeah.
It's like a, hey, you're a little tank.
You know, they are, I mean, think about us, you know, like if you were put in a situation where you thought your life was dependent on it, if you were that in much of a state of panic or fright, you would do whatever it takes, right?
Well,
to
and we
bust
ended
out.
up doing what you said. We have a key
How does it
around
go?
the crate, we leave the door open. And when we have to go to work, that's their area.
Yeah,
And I can show you right now, they're
Okay.
both sitting in front of a window going, are you coming back?
chill, right? Yeah. But see, that simple adjustment, which is more, it's more relaxed, I would say. It's not as confining, right? But then they also have choice within that environment.
Right.
Right, now, let's say if it's one dog and that dog still is like panicked with the crate. Something you can do is start to build a positive association with the crate. Let's say we have a plan in place that everyone is okay with and the dog is safe, right? Let's just say a guest room or a bathroom. We're able to keep the dog in the bathroom when we're gone so the dog is safe. Now you have an opportunity to, again, start building a positive association. So what I tell people is, this is still, keep in mind, no food aggression, no resource guarding, but put treats or food in the crate throughout the day, randomly, right? You could put one big treat and then notice if it's gone. If it's gone, likely, so-and-so got curious, right? And then it becomes a new space for them. It becomes this box that sometimes has things in it, right? So you can start to build an association that way. You know, it's something that it goes undervalued a lot, is dogs' resiliency. You know, recognizing the dog's ability to either show interest or mildly interact with something that may cause them fear, or knowingly start to have a different perception of something. Let me try to explain that again. Like, let's say the dog has, you know, had a terrible experience with the crate, and even just the sight of the crate, the dog is like, I'm out of here, right? Their ability to start to build confidence with that is so huge for their just well-being in general. And let's say they won't come within 10 feet of the crate. That's okay. Recognizing that everything the dog is showing you is okay in that moment is empowering, because it takes that expectations off of them, right? Because remember, we have a safe plan already in place. Now we have the freedom and ability to go at the dog's speed, right? Which is huge. Again, empowering the dog to make choices, but having a benchmark of knowing where the dog is at currently now gives us a chance to track the progress, right? So again, random treats throughout the day, or just placing them even around the crate. But you start to build that positive association with something that may be causing them fear. But you have to go at their speed. That's the biggest thing. And that's the same thing with trusting people. You know, recognizing that, okay, we can't rush this thing. You know, people, we're impatient a lot. Dogs are impatient a lot sometimes too. But we are impatient, you know, because we have our experiences with dogs. And a lot of people, I call these people the magic people. The magic people think every dog loves them. Right? I'm sure y'all know magic people too. And they will see a dog and say, oh, I know that this dog is going to love me because all dogs love me, so I do what I've always done. What do a lot of people do with dogs they've never met before? Right? They reach out, they want them to smell them, they just need to touch them, they just need to overexpress that they're okay. And a fearful dog does not want that. I mean, it's the last thing they want.
And they go for the top of the head every time.
Over the top of the head, the dog's doing this,
That
the
one
dog's
right
giving them
there.
whale eyes, you know? The whole time the dog's expressing, I'm not comfortable with this, but that's what people do. You know, so that's where, again, we kind of walk this line of people's past experience with dogs doesn't apply to all dogs. It's really important to recognize that. But going at their speed, you can't harp on that enough, because it takes the pressure off for them and off of us to expedite any progress. Right? You go at their speed, and when you go at a dog's speed, you see their confidence grow exponentially as you do it. A great example is meeting people. just interacting with something that they may be scared of. Leangela mentioned earlier this program that I'm doing with Shelby Maine. It is a swim club program. So twice a week I get to take a couple dogs to the pool. And it has been such an eye-opening experience for me because I don't know what this dog's history with water is until we get there, right? I assume everything, good and bad, but it takes all the expectations off of them having to do anything when we get there. But putting them in this situation where you can watch their confidence grow in real time is so humbling because we go at their speed. There's no bar set that they have to do X when they get there. I've had dogs that just sit on the landing, on the dock. That's mine. But in my mind, that gives me another opportunity to help them build confidence with something they may be scared of. So I've come up with these, I call them shore games. Just things that you can do with the dog without even going down the ramp in the water. But they're around the water. But there's no pressure on them to do anything. It doesn't end in a negative light for them. And then eventually you see them start to build curiosity with something. Rewarding bravery is something that can never go understated with dogs. Reinforcing bravery. Food, praise, not too much, but just recognizing something that may boost their confidence. It's a really, really good thing to keep in the back of your mind when you're interacting with dogs around things they may be nervous with. But that has been something that the swim club has showed me is that, wow, going at their speed, taking the expectations off, their confidence grows in a quick, short amount of time. But you have to go at their speed. When I work with dogs in water in a natural environment, like a creek or a bank of water, it's less intimidating for them, but you see the same body language that you see with dogs who are nervous about a crate or nervous about meeting new people. And I call it this reverse kind of spiral. So let's say if you start at one point, they may creep up to the water, to the stranger, to the crate, and they lean and take a treat, and then they're gonna go back. So they go back to safety. Once they realize they can get back to safety, okay, maybe now I'll go a little bit further. Maybe I may touch the water, or smell the person, or take a treat off the end of the crate, and then go back to safety. All right, but that process, going at their speed, you see their confidence grow, you see them willingly try things out, and it is awesome to watch and experience. But we're not doing a whole lot. It's all on the dogs. And recognizing that, giving them the power of choice is the most empowering thing for them. Right? It takes the pressure off. You see that a lot with dogs who are hyperactive too. Right? Hyperactive dogs, they deal with their emotions in a very fast way, just impulsive way, right? Whether it's jumping, whether it's pawing at the door, whether it's barking or being reactive on calls. These are very emotional dogs. But taking a deep breath or teaching them how to take a deep breath and think logically is super, super important. And that's going to be in their best interest moving forward. It helps them regulate their emotions. And the way we do that is by giving them the power of choice. Again, foster dogs, balls of clay. Right? You have a great opportunity to start to develop good habits and decision-making skills in these dogs. I tell people, if you can recognize the opportunities that you have for your dogs to make choices, do that and let them make choices. Right? That's the most impactful way for them to learn, is to try things, to figure things out. People tend to micromanage their dogs, tell them to do every single step throughout the day. Right? If you've ever had a boss that was like that, it's not a healthy relationship, right? But if you have a boss that says, here's something you can do, go for it. And they may let you fail, right? But you learn through failure. But they're not on your case every single second of the day. It's a much healthier relationship, right? So with dogs, if you recognize those opportunities for patience or calmness versus hyperactivity, you can change the way they perceive how to make things happen. You know, dogs are impulsive because we oftentimes feed into that impulsivity. If your dog is at the back door going like this, and then we're like, go. that dog learns that behavior got me outside. So then I see a person and I'm like, oh my gosh, and that gives me some loving too, right? So it's reinforcing this hyperactive behavior. But if you recognize those opportunities and say, all right, let's just see what happens. I love to say that all the time, let's just see what happens. Because we won't know unless we give it a shot. So let's say we're at the back door and the dog is pawing, and we're just standing there. We're not telling them to do anything. And then the dog's thinking, and then the dog jumps on me, and then the dog sits. And now I open the door and let her go out. That dog made 3 choices there. 2 didn't work, the last one did work. So option C worked. You recognize those opportunities, and if you're consistent with that type of approach, that option of calmness, sitting, standing there, just patience, starts to float to the top real quick. Because they're like, oh, that got me outside. When you're gonna feed them, watch what they do. If your dog's super excited, jumping, it's not a bad thing, but recognize it and say, all right, let's just let them work it down, and then place their food. They're like, oh, okay, sitting or just being calm, that and then the food will come out. Right? Same thing, getting it out of the car, fence gates, putting the leash and harness on them. You know, these are all opportunities that if we recognize them, we can start to help them think differently about how to make things happen. Because dogs are just like us, they learn the patterns. They learn this action leads to this result, and if I like that result, then I'll do that action. If I don't like that result, then I'll try something else, right? But a lot of it is just taking the reins off, like taking a step back and saying, let's let them figure this out. You know, decision makers, logical thinkers, patient dogs, they don't start that way, not often, because, again, we feed into that impulsivity a lot. But if you recognize it, you can change the game dramatically as far as what your dog thinks it needs to do to make a result happen. A lot of that kind of harps into reactivity a little bit. There's a lot of levels of reactivity, different types. But a lot of it is just emotional outbursts, you know. And when our dogs are reactive, sometimes we as handlers may try to do things to fix the problem, but we're adding more energy to this already very arousing situation for your dog. Don't look at that thing, come towards me, sit. Trying to have a dog sit when it's reacting in this emotional outburst is just adding fuel to this thing, right? But creating a pattern for your dog or giving your dog a chance to think about what to do is tremendous. You know, when we work with reactivity on leash walks, we try to reinforce our dog's choices. And they have a few choices they can make that we really like. One is just observing the trigger calmly. Like, that's a great choice we can reinforce. It doesn't always happen that way, but if it does, we're going to let it be known that that's super great. Right? Another decision we can reinforce for the dog is checking back in with us. Right? Offering their focus to us is huge. But when it comes to reactivity, you always want to make sure that you're structuring practice at a manageable level, right? Meaning, if you're just starting to work on reactivity, you're not going to go to a dog park and stand in the periphery and try to work that all day, arousing energy capital, right? It's baby steps. But that's kind of the mindset behind it, is you want to reinforce the choice. And once you're able to reinforce the dog's choice, and it works for them, they're like, I got this. I now know what to do. You don't have to tell me what to do. We're not telling the dog to do the thing, we're just letting it happen. And reinforcing choice. And no, we're not saying that. Yeah.
So I understand what you're saying, when you've got this time, let them, let's say you're out, you're walking the dog, and all of a sudden, they're reacting to a small child, another animal, and there is no, let me let you work your choice.
I get it.
Holy crap.
So there's two scenarios. One is the manageable, we're making progress.
Because I'll tell you, my knee-jerk reaction is, come here.
Yeah, no, I get it. And that's, that's an option. When it comes to reactivity, there's options. There's what to do when it goes right, rewarding for observing, right? Rewarding for checking in, rewarding for calmness. That's when it's smooth sailing. What you're talking about is reality, right? Which is when I get it, yeah, I get it. So recognizing in those moments, there's not one thing that's always going to happen. There's a handful of things that you can attempt. Now, food distance from the trigger is almost always your best friend. So creating distance as quickly as you can. If you see a person, your dog's reacting to something in this direction, trying to go that direction is going to be in your best interest.
I just hate to be the one that's dragging, especially a dang,
Yeah.
dragging a dog away, but at the same time, when it's a quick reaction, he's gotten really good.
Yeah.
With paying attention to us, checking in with us, we have become a safe spot.
Yeah,
Which
good.
is maximum. But he has not reacted to anything really other than where you guys, is everything okay, are y'all okay with this? Fantastic. The other pastor, however, does have I'm not, and you cannot see it coming. So she's the one who would come out where the helicopter is and watch him going.
So if it's something that you're still kind of evaluating, to kind of see, try to set up a scenario. Is she more reactive to people or dogs? People with dogs.
So he was, and then he actually had.
It's weird.
Yeah.
She's great with Batman. She
Right.
loves Batman. She seems to love that dog. She's what we call the pro at events. We take her to events and she knows that champ.
Yeah.
Until, and then all of a sudden it's when you look over and go, oh no, I just don't like what that person looks. What just,
Yeah.
we've been fine with 52 people walking through here.
Well, it could be, the term, has anyone heard the term trigger stacking? Have you heard that term before? Yeah, so it's kind of the way of taking in your environment where a handful of small things now seem more impactful. So there's a thought. I can't say this for sure what's going on. Keeping that thought in mind is really important because if you recognize precursors, let's say you're sitting at a table, you got that dog with you, and the person walks by at a distance and the dog just kind of looks at it, right? And then the dog kind of fixates on the next person. And then it's just slowly building. If you recognize these precursors, then you can adjust the dog's, change the dog's environment.
So a quick glance at one and then fixating on the next
So-
can be starting the side.
Yeah, this is just an example. But like recognizing mild behaviors, getting more tense, I guess is the best way to describe it, would tell us, okay, potentially the dog's emotions are starting to, build. But it's a lot with reading the body language. Some dogs may just be startled in that quick moment. Oh my gosh, this person just walked up to me and I didn't know they were coming, so now I'm in an emotional state right now. But I would say if that is your event dog, or if that is a dog you're going to bring into an environment that may have a lot of stimulation, set them up for success on the front end. So like, let's say you were going to bring them, we're at an outdoor patio like this, y'all probably don't want to be in a corner where you can see everything as it comes to you. And you can get out or you can stop things from coming to you. Like you can modify this environment by advocating. That's really a main factor when it comes to close proximity is you being able to communicate with something to stay back away. I was walking one of my dogs the other night and I didn't know there was a baseball game going on. We get up there and there's a ton of people and the guy sees me with his dog and instantly is just like, I'm coming to you. And I have to be like, hold on. And the dog is actively expressing, don't come near me, I'm barking at the guy. And he's still coming, and I'm like, no, stop. I'm like, he's scared, and he's like, oh, no. And I have to be like, don't come any closer.
You're the magic.
I have to tell him, he's a magic guy. I have to tell him as blunt as necessary to express, do not come closer. For everyone's safety. But it's hard for people to understand in that moment because they just see a dog and it's like beer goggles. They need to have dog goggles. It's just like, oh my gosh, everything that I should do is out the window. You know? But like that idea of you do what is necessary to express to whoever to keep the situation safe. You know, I mean, I've been rude to people or perceived as rude, but really trying to help them out. But like, do not come close. Right? This is how it's gonna be. Right? I'm sorry. I don't even let them get that close. If it's a, well, yeah, I mean, like you can body block, but if I have to be, I try not to be in a situation where I feel that that is necessary. So like if you're this close to me, I would probably feel safe like this. But if we were like this close, I'm just gonna create distance. Like I would yell across the field or across a distance to communicate if I need to. But if it's a situation where you feel you need to body block, that's what that term is. Yeah, then I would create a bigger buffer. Yeah. And that's going to be easier on the dog too. And you know, just let's say if your dog is untrustworthy of people, and you encounter a person on your walk, it doesn't mean you have to avoid them. Like, there's compromises, and treat tossing is a great compromise. And I think that it's a great trust building exercise, like we talked about earlier, with people that they may not know. So let's say I'm walking the dog and I see a person. I know my dog's going to react, but they're at a point where we can be close enough to communicate with this person. I may put some treats on the ground, create a buffer, to create space. Oh, absolutely. But you have to be very direct with people, because people will say, "Oh, treats." That's not where we were going. Where we were going is
I'm not offering this one.
Right. Well, not with your hand, right? Not hand feeding the dog. That being the difference. So like if I'm walking a dog and someone's coming, I may put some treats right there, go off the sidewalk. As we get close, I may say, "Hey, you mind just tossing those to my dog?" And that be it. You know, but you get people who say, "Oh, here, can I hand feed them?" And then, "Oh, awesome, that's it," right? But that being a compromise, if the situation can handle it, you know, if the dog can handle that, if the person doesn't mind doing it, but at the end of the day, they don't have to interact. But something one of y'all mentioned earlier is dealing with your off-leash dog approaching. Yeah, is that what you mentioned?
I mean,
That's a
thankfully, we've had it where they, come up to us, and of course, we always, 9 times out of 10, we have Sweets with us,
yeah.
and she is reactive, or she's particular.
Yeah.
I would say she will discriminate on, you never know when she will be like, don't come near me.
Kind of
So, but yeah, when a dog comes up and you have a reactive dog, or even, I know some have, like Barbara has a senior dog. So, in those situations, because obviously you want to protect your dog, you don't want to hurt the other dog, but you also want to consider your safety too.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a ton of factors involved. One thing is you don't know this other dog. That other dog doesn't know us. So having a plan, I think, is very important. Every situation is going to be different, but there is a strategy to having some sort of treats on you. One is definitely, I think, a great thing to have. I think of treats just as like a collar or a harness or a leash. It's a tool that you have, and you can utilize in a lot of different ways. An off-leash dog approaches you, or an animal approaches you, first thing I'm going to do, as soon as I see it, is try to grab some treats and chunk it right at the animal. So hopefully their focus can shift from me to now we're foraging or searching, now we're creating distance. Because especially with all the dogs that have a reactive, the last thing we want is to be approached by something that is uncontained. So tossing treats is a great first move. Having something else with you that can deter that dog from coming closer is another thing. Now, she said dog mace, right? So they have a spray.
Dog mace?
They have a spray. Yeah, they have a spray that you can use. You have to be mindful of that. That spray can go in your face too.
And your dog.
And your dog's face, yeah. not to say that that's not I mean, that is an option. You know, all these are options. Sprays, you can have the air horn, mini.
We were attacked by 3 dogs.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and I ended up on the ground with my dog and 3 siblings.
Yeah.
And I thought, it's now.
Yeah.
I can't dog
Yeah.
now.
No, that's
Either that or it's gonna be a gun.
That's another option.
Realistic, you know, I mean, people carry bats, sticks, you know?
Air horn is one option that I think is, it's not as, basically, it's not as, it doesn't cause as much damage, it's more startle, right? It's a startle factor. Now it's going to startle your dog too, right? But keeping that in mind is, that's an option. Some people will carry a taser, you know, like a baton taser or one that makes a loud sound. One thing that I haven't tried, but I've brought it up and thought about it. They have these, they're tailored as like a female defense mechanism. It's like a thing you put on your keychain where you pull it, burn it, exactly, yeah. So you pull it and it makes a loud and it flashes.
It is very loud.
Yep, it is. And it's easily, you can easily turn it on, you know. So there's a thought there. You know. Again, I haven't experimented with it, and I would like to. I don't recreate that situation. It's one of those things you have it, and hopefully you never have to use it, right? But it's a thought. These are all thoughts. Michael Shikashio is a well-known behaviorist with dogs and aggressive dogs. He brought up an umbrella, having an umbrella with you where you can open it and make a big bracket to try to create space between you and another animal. Oh yeah. Yeah. And usually, I mean, aggressive dogs are usually scared for some amount of reason when they feel threatened, you know, but having something that goes from small to big can bring it up real quick.
Okay, worse than another. They locked us. Now,
Yeah, so
It takes your neighbors coming out and getting them.
I'm trying to get people's attention to the situation. You know, having a brake stick is something very beneficial. So if they're locked on, the brake stick is like it's like a wedge with a handle, and you're able to pry the dog's mouth open to separate them. But it's a scary situation if you're by yourself, right? Best thing to do in that moment is to try to get people to come to you, because you're not in a safe situation to be able to dislodge these dogs. Because let's say if you do get them, it's still going to be happening, and now you're in the middle of it. Yeah, absolutely. And dogs will be corrected. People who are simply just trying to break them apart. You know, it takes a lot for dogs to do mortal damage to each other. It's going to take some time. So you have time. Recognizing that they're locked up and there's not any activity. There's no dogs coming in. Now let's get help. Let's create a periphery where people can police assist or be able to get you medical attention or your dog's medical attention if it gets to that point. You know, that's worst case scenario. But having something to try to create that space on the front end is going to be in your best interest. Now, there's always accidents and there's always exceptions, but knowing your environment is going to help you too.
Remember, I was at pickup the other night in the bar.
Live in a place where you know
played
there's all these dogs, or there's a potential for the dogs to get out. I'm not going to.
You remember me, or you just like?
No, I remember. How can you forget that?
That's super.
Whatever.
Right, for a dog, this is, I want to make this point because I think it's super important to recognize, you know. I have the conversation with people who let their dogs off the leash often, and it's not a pleasant conversation because I don't have patience for it anymore. Right. What I tell people is, regardless of whatever your dog's behavior is, I don't know that. Right? If I'm just walking by myself, and a dog approaches me, I don't know anything about it. It could be the most friendly dog in the world, but I don't know. For someone with a history of being attacked, or being hurt, or traumatized, or whatever it may be from an animal. Just the sight of an off-leash dog can produce a whole range of emotions, I'm sure. Not taking that into consideration is so, it's wrong, you know, because you have to consider everything. I know people who won't go outside of their home because of the potential of a dog. Just because of whatever emotions they're feeling. It's not fair to that person. You know, but I think that hopefully through having conversations like this, that consideration starts to grow. Because that's not what a lot of people think about. A lot of people think more of dogs and dogs versus a dog and a person who may be attacked by it. I don't know. So having that consideration is super, super important. And same thing with dogs. I mean, like if I'm walking with my shelter dogs and I see a person who has a dog off leash, I'm yelling as soon as I see that. Put your dog on a leash. He's friendly. This one may not be. You know, and the difference between that dog on a leash and that dog approaching us off leash could be the life of this dog and the life of that dog.
You don't know that something's wrong. Your dog doesn't know it's not.
Your dog doesn't know that this is wrong. That's the all right.
Your dog is
I'm probably, my husband's a UPS driver. He pulled up an all the dogs are everywhere. Until we're on the back of my cat
But the flip side of that perception is he doesn't know your experience with dogs. So like you could be the most friendly dog to every human in the world, but if you've had an experience with a dog, and that's the plain and simple fact of it is that it doesn't matter what your dog is friendly or not. There's a reason for those rules. There's a reason for those leash laws is to try to keep everyone as safe as possible. But no one should be in a situation where you don't feel comfortable walking your dog in front of your house or go on a walk.
All my neighbors were out. They answered my arrest.
Yeah. That's a terrifying situation.
I'm old and I'm on the ground with 4 pit bulls. One has a 7.
That's, I feel for you in that situation.
Yeah, that was the man. I was taken around for the last walk before I was coming to the meeting. My husband came around and told me about it. Yeah, we should do it in the grass. You know? And the neighbors are beating with brooms and stuff, you know?
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, you know, like when it comes to breaking up a dog fight, a lot of people's just instincts are going to kick in. You're going to be hitting, punching, pulling, sticking hands in mouths, all these things, you know. So like learning how to properly break up a dog fight is definitely in everyone's best interest, but there's a lot of factors, you know, and you try to stop it before it happens, but then when they are locked on like that, best to try to assess the situation for what it is. Keep other dogs from coming in, try to recruit help, use tools to your advantage. Right? Know that the situation, try to contain the situation as best you can. When you have multiple dogs, now it's just very, even though they're problematic in arguments. But the nature of it is that it's going to take a long time to cause real, like death damage, you know? So doing your best to try to get people to come to your aid. But again, I hope that no one experiences that again or exactly.
You always get lead up on, well, you know, not patient, and not this, and that, and figure out if they're reactive, and it's like, what happens the rest of us?
You know what that is? I was in, when we went to Fort Morgan,
That's a great question. I'm glad we can talk about that. You know, and let's say if that's your dog. You know, if your dog is the one that's going to do the damage.
it's a real big
Having
place.
preventive measures in place for is definitely a good idea. Muscle training is a great resource for people. Muscle training does not mean your dog is bad. It doesn't mean that you're bad. It it means you're super responsible. Right? You're taking the steps to try to keep other things safe.
It was good last night.
Muscle training is a process that your dog should enjoy and will be involved in every step of the process. And of course, it's all through positive association and going at the dog's speed.
Just the conditions there, and
That gives you comfort of being able to take your dog out knowing that the dog fight may not happen, or at least your dog can't cause damage. That's great. If that means you can take your dog to the vet and they can perform things on them safely, do that. That means someone can come and check on your dog, or can someone else come around? I mean, like these are steps to take to try to keep everyone as safe as possible, but still not having to force the dog to do anything. If that makes sense. Yeah, there was something else I was going to say. Oh yeah, someone said talking about handling dogs. Right. Has anyone heard of Fear Free? Y'all heard of Fear Free? So Fear Free is like I guess an educational resource of learning how to do things in animal, whether it's doing medical procedures or learning how to interact with fearful dogs or how to transport fearful or aggressive dogs. Learning those types of techniques, or even just being exposed to that, can start to get your brain moving.
They have they have like Fear Free for a shelter, they have Fear Free volunteer, Fear Free for the pet owner. So like, if your dog has anxiety just in the car, because the idea or philosophy behind it is that our interaction is just to minimize the stress in the animal, no matter what is causing the stress. So they have it geared towards the platforms, educational platforms are geared towards what it is that you might be doing. So like even for cats.
Yeah, yeah, they have all yeah, exactly. And like, again, being open to hearing that information or just being exposed to that information triggers some ideas. There's been so many things that we have come up with in the shelter environment, implemented in the shelter environment that has been for a lot of dogs. I built this box at the shelter, and it's just a big crate with a movable wall within the crate.
Oh, yeah.
So this is a way that we can give injections or vaccines to dogs who are fearful. Hands-off approach. So the idea is we'll usher the dog into the crate, we'll get it on its own, close the door. Once the dog is contained in the crate, we'll take this wall and just slowly move it towards the front to make it space. And then we have holes already drilled in the side of the crate where we're able to get access and get an injection or vaccine pretty easy. And that was just something that we just thought of and said,
So when are you thinking about
yeah, I do
maybe
with my car. In fact, I'll give it at the end. But that something that just thought about, and I said, do y'all mind if I take this crate home and start drilling on it? And they're like, sure, and it's working. Like, that's the thing, just simple ideas like that.
So it's pretty long.
Can be the game changer.
As working in a vet's office, that's huge. I've done that before, and that is huge to be able to have a way to safely, and even when I worked at Shelter Humane in the medical department, that was, there would be dogs that I would dread. I was like, please don't let it be hard.
So is she gonna live by herself?
Yeah, and that's where,
Missy, she's
I think
gonna
those types of hands-off ways to do procedures or to do jobs that are the least stressful for the dog is huge. But it starts at the very beginning. I didn't say we force the dog in the crate. I mean, it sometimes takes 10 minutes for the dog to really go in on its own. And then everything else is real subtle, versus rushing. Rushing things is a big recipe for bad news. Yeah, I don't want to say disaster. Because sometimes it's not a full disaster, but to rush things, it is there's a good rule of thumb. I think they call it the rule of 3. You try something with an animal 3 times, it doesn't work. I say 2 sometimes, depending on the animal or where the reactions are getting from the animal. But if you try to give it a shot, or if you try to leash it up, or if you try to get it through the threshold, and it's not working, 2 or 3 times, just stop. There's no sense of keeping trying because you're just adding more stress to the
Maybe
situation.
back in the day, I mean,
That's something about like when it comes to interacting with dogs who are
sporadic.
hesitant about
But
something.
maybe it's because
Building that relationship,
wants to do
building that
something,
relationship
just
with
sit
the dog
around.
opens up a lot of opportunities for
But I have stopped.
doing
If he wants
it.
to do anything,
Now, there's a lot of dogs that
he's
show
gonna have to
that
call me and say, let's do it. I'm gonna say, you know what?
interact with me, so they can't get a heart
Call me
test,
when
they
you're
can't get a
there.
microchip,
And
they
I'll
can't
mix
get
it.
So that's what we're like.
He's set me up so many times. I mean, I don't have to,
So I don't do that relationship with them.
I don't do that, so.
And then you'd be surprised, dogs that are vulnerable, once they open up their trust circle, they are those dogs. It's like the 5 that are in the house right now. They trust me a lot.
Are they your dogs now?
No, they're still shelter dogs. But they trust me so much. And now, knowing how to develop that trust, now it's trying to open up about people to that. It takes a really understanding person to take on the dog. It's not a one size fits all. It's not a, you come to my house and happy ever after on the first day. It's a process.
And I think that's what makes fostering within a shelter difficult for those dogs, right? Because they stop time. They don't always have all the time or the resources to have the
I'm sitting here
patience.
listening to
I think
him.
that's something that, I know I struggled with that.
You can't move them out. You can't do quick turnover like you do when you get puppies. So you end up with so many more
Yeah, we're not.
stress in the shelter environment. And it's like, I can't run in quickly
Yeah, whatever.
to help you.
That's why I work from home. You know, where it's like, it's one of those things where I know these dogs can live with me, and I know what it takes for them to live, but now they're out of that environment, which is not conducive for their mental health at all, or physical health. But they're out of that environment, and they can decompress, and now the process can start, which is them learning the routine, inviting people to start to meet them, so that way they can start to develop that trust. But I know that the ones that are at my house right now, when they have a meet and greet, they're not going anywhere that night. And I have to express that to the people, but I think more and more over time, people are starting to become more open to the idea of, this is going to take effort for me, if this is what I want. If I want to live with this dog, I have to get to know this dog. I call them real dogs. For face value, they say, why should I trust you? But if people can take that time to start to develop a relationship, they're the best. It's like, I've had my trust broken so many times, but now it's there, and giving me up. That's how that's what makes them so special. But it takes understanding people to get to that point. But that's what we'll continue to start to do. Build that trust. That's the biggest thing, relationships. So, I'll end there, and if y'all have questions, or no time schedule. Thank you guys for having me.
I think he's gonna get one afterwards. We're gonna have you draw our name on the basket.
Okay. This one. Okay. Inga.
I use my mom's trick. Paper with a pen and
That's the move. Thank you guys for letting me.
Thank you so much.
And I will, I will give y'all my card, and if y'all ever have questions, email, call me, text me. If you call me or text me and I don't answer, don't take it personally. I'll call back.
He will.